Guy and Pepper, and we're here to do artist check-in. I actually have work to show. I'm all excited.
So do I.
Yeah, you do. You've got
Uh-huh.
better work than me to show.
Well, how about I start with mine so everyone has like
Everyone can just love you. No.
Well, okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. How do I share my screen?
Hit the share button down at the bottom. It's right next to the
Okay.
camera.
All right. So, what you are pulling up.
What you're about to see.
What you're
never
about to
been
see.
seen before.
Other than, all of my icons
right
on my desk.
I got those too.
So here is the front cover of Campfire Stories of Lake Kikipapi, Zombies of the Lake. Written by Bill, who is always behind the lovely thing, like
the wall.
Yep, see, there's his hand. And I put a credit on here for my best friend since the third grade, literally, Megan Thurston.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to give you all the pages, but I just want to say
page 1.
So I actually have like the credit page, like I actually have a legitimate credit page, and I did an image that foreshadows for the next one right here. And this is on how it starts. Right here. This is the very first page I did actually coloring.
Do you know the artist Adam Ellis?
Yes, I do.
The girl on their cover on the left has like this epic Ellis look on her face of, oh my God. I love it so much. Her.
The one here?
Yeah, on the left.
Yeah.
She's got, just that wonderful expression. And I mean this as a compliment, by the way. Yeah. He's really good at expressing the character and making the character look suitably horrified or suitably confused at his cat who's putting his butt on everything or whatever is today's thing, right? And I'm just saying that I wanted you to know that I really, really love the piece is great, but my favorite part's her expression.
Well,
it's so good.
I will openly admit that this person right here, her name is Tracy, and so the current campers know her as the director of the camp.
Right.
In the current session. And so for the past session that we're discussing with this one, in the story, she's actually a camper.
Okay.
So there's that. So obviously,
was she a happy camper? I'm just wondering.
Well, you'll have to read and find out. She liked the archery activities. That's for sure.
I like the archery activities.
Yeah. So this is the starting shot. This is the current modern day version of the camp. So we go from the morning, and then this is the evening, because that's on how it was written. You can thank Bill.
Wow, 10 panels.
Hey, you know what? It works.
It does. It totally works. I'm just okay. So it's one of the things I like to talk about is panel count.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between manga style panel count and American style panel count, and it's just.
And you're starting to see my manga influence.
Well, no, your panel count's really high, because like usually manga doesn't go over about 6 panels on a page, and that's crowded. That's a real crowded. But this doesn't look crowded. This looks open. It looks airy, and I'm like, you did a really good job. You've got 10 panels on here, and it looks open and airy. It does not look crowded.
Yep, and you can thank Rumiko Takahashi for this type of stuff.
Right. Rumiko's it's all about the framing. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean it's that's a thing that when it comes to panel count. Now, I actually, as an artist, Brent says hi. As an artist, I personally use panel count to my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I add more panels when I want it to be stressier. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, the more action that goes, the more panels I put on a page. If we're slow and everything's moving slowly, then I have a fewer amount of panels.
Well, and if you actually
are you following the discussion, Brent, on Star Frontiers? Is that why you put that up?
So I just want to point out that one thing about this page that's actually unique was the reason why there are 10 panels. So when you have a writer who writes long paragraphs of description and movement, you have to figure out, how is this going to be moving?
Right.
How is this going to look like its movement? And I think with this one, it was such in a way where, so the first two panels were actually described as in panel 2, these 3 kids were supposed to be walking up and stopping.
Right.
And these 2 kids were already established in the shot. So basically what I did was I did it so that you knew something was happening between the 2 panels. But It's actually one panel. But I just put a line through.
It looks really good. I mean, all of the work that's there is awesome. Someday we should do an entire show of breakdowns on panels and panel work and spacing, because the way you do it versus the way I do it. And by next week, I'll have full pages ready to go, so we could compare page to page.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go to the next page now.
And yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 panels in this page. That's awesome.
Again, this is all about, like, and if you notice, there's not a lot of text.
No.
Everything is flowing in the sense of it's the part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I do. Like, that's on how I try to visually tell the story, not just by the panels. I just try to visually tell the story of that. And also this one, there is a stressor because, like, all of their electronics basically short out midway through the panel. That's what this pop right here is for. Like that one panel that says pop. Because there is, they have to go to gas lanterns, or basically the lanterns, which are oil or gas. All right. And now we get into the where it's normal panel count for most people, and it's the summer of 1973, summer of 1973. So modern day version of this camp is 2003, folks. That is when the present timeline takes place. That's why no kid has a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see, the camp back then had a little bit more of a dress code. So they have scouting like uniforms.
Scout uniforms.
And this is basically where the trouble starts for them. They basically go to a part of the camp that they're not supposed to be at. And I just want to point out, I love how I did the nighttime water.
Yep. You're such an artist. I do the same thing. I'm like, ooh, look, it's the thing in the background. And everybody's like, what? It's the thing in the background.
And this is the last page I'm going to stop at, is right here.
I like that.
But I want to point out, the moment I switch over to the panels that are for the actual, like, fireside campfire story, you notice that the telling of the story is a little bit slower pace because of the panel count.
Right.
And before it is, and I will agree, it was
right. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Brent and I are all like amazed by it.
Yeah, I would go to the next one, but I believe my husband does not want me to go past this page.
I don't blame him.
But what
There's
I will
no point in buying the comic if we've seen it all.
Yeah, I know, right?
And you guys going out to sell it and peddle it tomorrow, right?
We're actually leaving tonight, and then we're going to be there for a Saturday event. When I said that it's a small print run, I meant it. There was only a 25. I only printed 25.
Hopefully in a week or two we'll have it on Amazon.
Bill says hopefully in a week or two we'll have it on Amazon.
Nice.
So, are we doing the print on demand then?
No, just digital.
Okay.
I mean, we can test it. I want to get a sample from it.
All right. So we're talking about now getting a sample from Print on Demand Comics from Amazon. Is that a comic or a novel?
It's a novel, but this is a print on demand, and it's not bad at all. I mean, that's exactly what this was. This is
I would have
absolutely
to see,
print on demand.
I would have to see their comic though. Their comic.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that I was more than pleasantly surprised at the print on demand quality. The covers are nice and solid. The color is good. The interior pages, it is a novel, so the pages are, but they look like normal. Huh?
How do I stop screen sharing?
Oh, we just turn it off over here.
Because I can't see your thing.
We do that, but then we can also do this, and you can. But I mean, the page quality is solid. The paper feels good. The artwork's not bad. You know, it came out solid too.
Yeah.
And the cover has a nice gloss. You know, and it's got the indentation for the spine. The spine work looks nice too and solid. I mean, it's not bad. This is a very solid print. I'm duly amazed. I now have a spare copy, sadly. So apparently my stepmom knew that my dad was going downhill and told him about the book. So he actually knew about it. Because I was hiding it. I was keeping it a secret. And until we drove down there. This trip next week, by the way, so that everybody's aware, we will be, of course, on the road next week. I think we're staying here Wednesday, plausibly Thursday, so we probably are still on for Watercolor Wednesday. But I think we might have to do Watercolor Wednesday / artist check-in. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, if anyone's actually seen what I post recently on Facebook or on Instagram, I finished all those concept sketches for people to view.
Are we changing subjects? We're changing subjects, aren't we? Or are you talking to Brent?
I'm.
You're talking about for Watercolor Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm referencing our past Watercolor Wednesday. Sorry, I was still on subject. I wasn't sure where we were going after your comment.
It's all good.
So yeah, I did do. I finished those up, and Brent, yes, we are trying to set up direct to order. However, our website has not gotten back up. We are trying to take our time. We host our website ourselves.
Yeah.
So when our server went down, it took our websites with it. So that's what we're trying to get. We have to rebuild our entire websites from scratch.
Right.
And so if anyone's actually seen those concept sketches that I posted online,
I love
Bill has basically requested that I actually do an entire comic in that style. which basically is a cross between Hanna-Barbera and Peyo.
Yeah, I know. I loved it. It was really cute. It was adorable.
But the artist I sent it to for inspiration was like, I'm gonna I'm gonna follow your style as close as possible. It looks great.
Yeah, it looked solid. I was okay with it too. I wasn't just okay with it. I thought it was really awesome. But that's just me.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, I sent it for him to be inspired. Like, not like I didn't like these are things of like, I don't want to draw this comic because I know I'll be an emotional wreck. Like, I'm drawing my grandparents' house over and over and over again, to the point of it, like, for me, I would be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to take over. You know.
I was actually thinking about this. There's a Reddit subreddit that I follow called r/imaginary slice of life, and all they are is just people who do pictures like that bottom left picture that you had, which was just the room with a pillow in the front and stuff like that. And I was like, that's something that you could post to that and they would love it, because that's what that whole subreddit's about, is just a moment in time. You know, a lot of times it's, you know, Japanese, there are a lot of Japanese artists on there who have, you know, students at like a soda machine. And it's a great picture, but it's just a moment of two students talking while drinking a soda from a soda machine. You know, vending machines are ubiquitous in Japan, so you know, it's like they're everywhere. So it makes sense that part of Japanese culture now is standing and chatting in front of the vending machine. You know?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that picture, like, a lot of people like the scenes. I shared it and I tagged like as many family members I could realize that were on my Facebook page. What's funny is those pillows are, my grandparents specifically bought them for grandkids and cousins to come over and like play and use those because they had terracotta tile in that room.
Yep.
And so for when you're a kid,
that hurts.
And you only have it hurts.
Right.
You know, terracotta tile is not fun to kneel on, folks. So those pillows are actually Costco-sized dog beds.
Yeah. It's funny how that all works, because, of course, we didn't have that problem necessarily, but my grandparents' houses, both of them, until I was bigger than my kid, they had shag, because 70s, you know. And, and I mean, when I was my child's age, it was 1983. So, you know, it was just getting out of shag and into normal carpet. You know?
I was born in 83.
Right.
My mom and dad's house, when we first moved in, had shag carpeting.
Yep.
I remember it was this horrible black, white, and orangish brown shag carpeting specifically. Now, if I see something like that, it brings back nostalgia, and I like it.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I hated it.
Yeah, the house that we moved into in 84 had orange carpet. And it was brand new. It was a new build. I mean, they had just built it. And it had, like, fall color orange. So, like, that kind of rust orange. And that was the carpet in the house. It was like...
Everyone equates the 80s to like neon colors and these bright colors, and like the meme says, no one actually truly captures on how brown
everything
the 80s were. Like,
it's because we all were like, why did you do all these browns? And so nobody wants to remember all the browns. Instead, we remember the neon colors because they were at least better.
And I think the reason why we wore so many neon colors in our clothes during that time frame was because it was brown. It was dreary. It was very, very like. And I'm not saying earth tones.
No.
It would have been great if you could interject an olive green or some type of green. But they didn't.
Working so hard to get away from avocado green that there were no green colors.
I know.
No green.
Yeah, they went complete oxidization avocado.
Yeah.
You know, that grayish
brown.
green brown. It's
Yeah, it was
disturbing.
brutal. It was brutal, man.
Um,
But anyway, I remember
mean,
that as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, like I couldn't like I remember that my grandparents had two couches in that room that I did, like the big room, the long room. So I got the terracotta tile, and I had the 1980s. They had a yellow wall and like a wood paneling hutch that was connected to the wall, and wood paneling throughout the back wall. And then the opposite side, where the kids' corner was, had wood paneling there. They ended up painting that entire room white, but they still had the railroad ties on the ceiling.
Wow.
And they painted those white as well. And I believe whoever came in after that, I think they either took down the railroad ties or they basically took the paint off. The room has been redone. I want to point out that whoever actually bought my grandparents' home, like they've redone the entire house. That specific room, however, was not originally on the house built. It was an add-on addition because there was a sliding glass door that went from the that was on the opposite side of the other sliding door, which was next to the pool.
Okay.
Their formal living room was on the other side of that glass door. So they created a family room so that their furniture wouldn't get messed up.
Yes. Yeah, I remember we had those too.
Yeah. So those two couches, though, one of them started out, I believe my mom has both of these couches now, but started out its life as a 1980s brown, orange, yellow pattern floral couch. And then the other one was like a weird color as well. And my mom like reupholstered them throughout the years for my grandparents. So again, harking back to the fact that my grandparents had furniture that was built to last.
Yeah.
You were just supposed to redo the covers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
for my
I will stop rambling now.
So yeah, anyway, the TLDR is I think that some of those would post really nicely on Imaginary Slice of Life, r/Imaginary Slice of Life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been actually thinking about doing that too, even with just the sets that I'm starting to build for Bellatrix Rising.
Gotcha.
Which is a good segue.
Yeah.
All right, wait, do you have more art?
I wanted to tell you that if you do that and you want to do it with watercolors,
I should do it with that.
Get one of these. So for everyone who hasn't seen what Guy is talking about, he's talking about these.
Yep.
That's what we've been talking
really
about.
Lovely. I love those.
Yes. This is my grandma.
There you go.
I'm not joking. This is my maternal grandmother. Here you go. This is what I posted, folks.
Yep. I love the little kids. They're so cute.
So the paper on this is like no other. I have tried Moleskine watercolor sketchbooks, and this is way better. And this is Etcher Labs. They are on the more expensive side for the larger ones. Mm-hmm. But they're worth every penny. And this right here, the cover, is canvas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry for delaying.
It's all good. We've
segueing. Now I can use that to do concept sketches for Bellatrix Rising.
Right, there you go. There you go.
Like, who would I be in Bellatrix Rising? When Guy starts drawing the pages, I'll have a better understanding.
Right. Hey, it'd be funnier. It was like, there's Pepper in the back. He's, making a plane move around or something. He's got a little like, well.
I agree, Ghost Hand. I agree.
Yeah. non-conventional settings. I agree. However, I feel like, well, that actually is true. That's the best part in the slice of life on that subreddit, is when they post something where it is a mundane thing in some fantastical universe. You know, you've got the kid sitting there eating the little bento box, and behind is a dragon looking over the kid's shoulder going, "Can I have some of the rice? Do you want the little octopus thing? Because I'll eat that." You know what I mean? That's actually a much cooler. Yeah,
I can see that, like, yeah, and he's right though. Ghost Hand follows it up with the sci-fi and military settings. Like, I mean, those work as well. Like,
Ghost Hand's gonna love Bellatrix Racing.
Yeah,
that's all I've done is a bunch of slice of life. I've done the first 3 of these intro comics, which are designed just to kind of get us oriented into the universe. They're all slice of life in Bellatrix Rising's universe. So
yeah,
you're gonna love that.
Yes. And by the way, thank you for creating a monster. My husband has been Bill has been talking about your story for a while.
I appreciate it. He comes up with some good stuff, though. So I mean, you
have to remember he's my writer for a reason.
Right, I know. I mean, there's a reason.
Don't steal my husband, guy. I'll come for you.
I'll just borrow him. I'll just borrow him a little.
It's all right. It's all right. I think you will enjoy being borrowed in that sense, because a lot of the times I have to say writers don't get enough credit.
They don't.
However, sometimes writers, I just
right.
It's like you gave me six sentences full of details to do one panel with an action.
Well, so it's
funny.
I'm pretty close friends with a letterer who works with DC, and so she makes commentary all the time. She usually letters, like she's right now working on Wonder Woman, but she's a letterer. That's what she does. She puts in the lettering.
Yeah.
And she posted that Star Wars meme with Anakin and Padme, and it was like you left enough space for the lettering bubble, right? It's like the lettering bubbles on top of their faces. And I was thinking about that, and I wrote, "Yeah, I hate it when my letterer does that too." And then she goes, "Wait, you're your own letterer because you're manga style." I'm like, he's still a jerk. It's like really funny. Okay, so here's what I have done here. First things first, I changed my imprint. I was using a different logo before, and this is my new Foxtail Comics logo that I'm going to use. It's still a Foxtail Graphics thing, but this has a lot more oomph. Are we having discussions online about stuff?
No, someone does. It's not you. I'm just responding to someone who basically is extremely excited to see me and Bill.
Oh, there you go.
So, yeah.
Good morning, Donald.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, that's
no. It's right. I'm not trying to ignore you. It's just it's one of those things of I don't think someone realized I was on a talk. I was on a show.
There you go.
So turning that off now.
One of the things that I have a big problem with whenever I do the writer's hat to my, artist hat switch is that as a writer, I have a problem with being too verbose. There's sort of a rule of thumb that we can't use more than 25 words per bubble. And I will have characters just rattle on for paragraphs, and then whenever I get to writing it or to drawing out the pages, I end up with bubble, 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 and they're all linked together because this person is just yammering, and I'm like, maybe I should go back for a rewrite on this one.
And when you're doing a comic that's directed more towards all ages, mainly in the sense of kids starting at like 10 years old are going to do it, the word count in the bubbles, each bubble actually goes
down. Yeah, it has to.
Because if you put too many words in a kid's comic, kids are not going to like it.
But I'm not a kid's comic writer, so it's not a problem.
No, I'm pointing out like the things that I have to remind Bill about sometimes too.
Which it's cool. But I mean, I had to go back and redo. I mean, heck, we had to do it in this 12 page. I had one sort of rambly comment, and you never think about what 25 words are, but 25 words is not a lot, Okay, so this was the big thing. The first thing I did was change my imprint. I've got some symbolism now in it, the C for Colorado, because I like Colorado. And then, of course, you can see Orion back here. And actually, I had one of my buddies figure out what was going on with the twinkling star. Of course, that's Bellatrix, naturally. So that has all of the triple entendres that are involved there. This also meant that I did a new page because I found out that my master pages were off by like 5 millimeters on the wrong side, so they were out of aspect ratio. So I had to go back in and remake them to make them work. So that's the next thing I did. And then I finally was like, okay, while I'm here, let's put all the data down in the bottom left-hand corner that we need. Like, what is the text size when working on this? And, where are all of the gutters? How big are my gutters? Because I like to make my gutters uniform unless I'm intentionally not. So that way I can use screwed up gutters as a sense of unease. So I can mess up my gutters really bad, and everybody goes, "Ooh, this page makes me feel uncomfortable." Meanwhile, the characters are like, "Ooh, we all feel uncomfortable." You know what I mean? So I can like express that in more ways than just, So I like to break a little bit and use the page itself to express. So, and I have an example of that from this page where all my gutters are screwed up because she's all uncomfortable and stuff. So I really am proud of this particular page because she actually looks like she's snarling here. She looks like unhappy and snarly. So that turned out really nice too. But here's a great example of me screwing up my gutters to make unease. All of my gutters are screwed up and all of my pictures are not aligned and stuff like that.
Yeah. But also that's a manga technique that I think, because the rise of popularity of manga, Western style comics, mainly American Western style comics, have adopted.
Yeah.
And I don't think they adopted them in the sense of like, oh, well, we're just going to take this. I think comic book artists that were into anime and manga just naturally did it because that's what they saw.
Right.
And it does look very nice. It looks very good.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. We actually have honest to God panels now in Bellatrix Rising. No, really.
Yeah. Now we just need to get a full page with color.
Right. The problem is that I don't have the nightstand yet. I need to build the nightstand for the set that goes in here for this because I render the backgrounds. And since this is an establishing shot right here of the entire set, like the room, so you can see her in her room, I need to go build the bedroom. But once the bedroom is built, all of it just will be like that. That's why I like using the maquettes for it, is because once I've built the bedroom, then I just because most of the time people, when they talk to each other, they talk and sometimes their hands move, and we effectively have two people talking to each other, one of whom is sitting very prim and proper in a seat. Now, Chang meanders all over the room, drinks water, screws around with her slipper, messes with, falls out of bed, whatever is going on with Chang. So she's going to be doing a lot of action. but for the most part, the other character is just going to sit prim and proper in a chair, which makes it really easy to just keep maneuvering with that character. So it's going to be a relatively easy build to get it to work. So that'll be nice. And right now, Chang's just like in these two scenes anyway. So in this third,
well, I mean, at least you didn't draw her like.
I totally was like going to make her drooly. I thought about making her drooly. That'd be funny. But I love this hand right here. Right?
Ghost Hand. I live. My husband's Italian, and I don't think he ever really does. Like, he has to move his hands. Like,
so my mom was a talent agent, and I grew up with actors, and I inherited a lot of the rules that they teach actors. So I move my hands all the time, because if you're on TV and you sit there like this, people think you are dead. So they teach actors to move forward and move backward and move around and move your hands and do things, you know. So I picked that up from my mom's talent. And everybody's like, "Are you Italian?" I'm like, no, I'm not Italian at all. I just had actors in my family. And they're all, sorry.
I grew up around a lot of people who were Italian and stuff, so like I get it. My dad, however, like he's French, and they talk with their hands too. But they're a little bit more like, where Italians will be like, "Whoa!" They're like, "Oh."
Right. Donald, to answer your question, the narrator boxes can have more than 25 words per text, but not by much.
I believe it's a minimum is per panel. A minimum is 50, 50 words per panel. If it's a narrator box.
Yeah.
But that's the cap.
Yep, that's your cap.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it has something to do with the culture that comes from directly from the Latin culture. I mean, it makes you, really honest. Roman had an entire word called diatribe, and it was a style of writing, and it was a style of speech, and it was a style of everything. And we still use it today to mean someone who gets on their soapbox and just yammers for like 20 minutes and gripes about something. And we still use that.
Yeah, like I did earlier. No,
yeah. A diatribe generally is like soapbox, you know. I know the aliens that invaded last week. And you're like, why are you talking about aliens? What's going on?
No, I think that is true. I mean, but also when you're trying to get into comic like building and world building and stuff like that, I think what it is you subconsciously have to remember that you have to do stuff that's on TV as well. Like, TV is what most people equate to entertainment in America.
Right.
And by TV, it doesn't mean actual cable service. It just means anything that you watch that's cinematic.
Video.
In this case, that's like when I was going through and you're showing these panels from Bellatrix Rising. I mean, there are actions that you can see translate well into media, such as a television program.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, waking up is like one of the classic scenes in any type of movie or TV or cinema thing is the waking up process.
Yep.
When you introduce a character that way, like, you're introducing them in the most god awful state sometimes.
Well, and that's what I've been making the joke too that our Bellatrix here is rising, but she's just rising very, very slowly.
Yeah.
Because the double entendre is with Bellatrix rising is that it's the star Bellatrix, but it's also Bellatrix is a female warrior. And since she is the captain of a ship, she is technically a female warrior. So that makes this a double entendre. And that makes this page a triple entendre because she literally is getting up and out of bed. She's rising. So thus, we have started the comic with a triple entendre. I'm all excited. I think that's funny. The more puns, the better, I tell you.
There's nothing wrong with being punny.
Right? Exactly.
Dad jokes for the win.
Right? Exactly. I did have to struggle with Clip Studio because this is actually kind of cool. The way that Clip Studio does their panel work is really nice, but you have to figure out how to do it. And it's kind of a pain in the butt. So once you figure out how to do it, it's not so bad. But I'll switch back to this so you can see what I'm talking about. But each panel here is actually on a different layer and layer group. And like I keep saying every time, it's like it comes up with a different problem child every time. Like I don't know. Why doesn't it do? But I mean, technically speaking, I can. Well, now you're all. Oh, the frame is screwed up. That's why. I can move the picture inside the panel. You see, and it doesn't, it doesn't bleed out of the panel, which I think is cool. I can reposition it in any way that I need to. That works. But that's a nice touch. The fact that it masks all of the panels makes it so much nicer. So that is a nice thing, but it took some time to figure it out. And like there are things where things are getting turned on and turned off, and I have no idea what's going on. When I was working on this yesterday, when I was working on this page yesterday, it was turning the background purple. Everywhere that wasn't the panel you were on was purple. Today, it's not. I don't know what switch got thrown. I mean,
you know what? I'm just going to say it right now. It's the Bill switch.
Okay.
You're talking to me. Bill's in the background. Your electronics are working fine.
Right. So there you go. He's proximity. But like then I did page 3, and it wouldn't. It had a circle with a red circle with a line through it yesterday for making panels. I did the exact same thing I did with this page, and it was like, no, you can't make panels now. So I'm like, I don't know what button got pushed to make it not allow panels to be made, but I do like that feature. When you have these, we can isolate it, but more importantly, I can change the aspect ratio of a panel if I don't like it. Like I was moving these panels and physically moving the panels back and forth across the page until they were positioned the way I wanted them to be positioned, which was cool, So it was nice that there's a lot of really good control when it comes to comics in this, but I really do feel like I kind of need to go, like my panel, my panel borders are way too thin. I don't know how to fix that either. I've got to make the border panels thicker, and as I was saying yesterday, I guess I just won't have a choice. I'm going to have to go to YouTube and watch the how to make your comic video.
You know what? Sometimes those like I had to deal with it too because I use Procreate, and Procreate is a major learning curve, especially if you're used to Clip Studio and Photoshop.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it was, but like it took me forever to realize, hey, if I just hold it down, it goes to a straight line. Because I was going on and doing assist.
Mm-hmm.
So it was making all my lines straight because I was getting an assist from the program.
Right.
But I couldn't do a box. I could only do one line at a time.
Right.
So, like, you have stuff like that. But then if you wanted, like, say, the wonkiness that you had in that one page, you could sit there and make your own panel, but then you'd have to make your own mask with it.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, there's like a lot of things that Clip Studio Paint does really well. And then there are things that Clip Studio Paint that does that makes me want to throttle the people. Not the least of which is like their text control. The control over text just drives me bonkers.
I'm just happy that Clip Studio can actually be used on the Mac now.
Right?
I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that the original program that it's based off of was the original creator basically said, we have PCs, we're not putting it on the Mac.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a number, like Procreate doesn't exist anywhere but on Mac either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can use it on my tablet.
Yeah.
So
where'd you go?
True thing. I mean, so that's where we are this week on this. I'm actually pretty pleased. We've got at least 2 panels down. And considering the fact that I actually do not have any other part of this Bellatrix set ready, I'm pretty proud of myself for that. So I'm hoping that I will have the remainder of the set built this weekend. And then that way I can render it. The set's also going to be especially designed so that the shadow of the character is going to be drawn on the walls. Because that character is the only thing emitting light in this room. And so the room is pitch black because Chang was asleep. So the room is pitch black, and then this is an AI. So she shows up in a hologram form. Well, she emits light being the hologram. So all of a sudden, you just have this like glowing ghost sitting in the chair, which Chang's going to be snarky about for a while, which is going to be funny.
Well, at least until she turns on some lights.
She never turns on the lights. It's actually what makes this scene cool. They talk to each other, and when finally it's like, well, goodbye, then the hologram disappears, and the last panel is all black. So it's symmetrical. The first panel's all black. The last panel's all black, and so it like starts on and it's funnier because of course it's just her in the middle of a black room. And she goes, damn it. Because she's standing in the middle of her room. And she doesn't know where the heck the lights are. I guess she could instruct her C word to turn on the lights. But
her C word? You mean her kitty cat?
Yeah, kitty cat. That's it. The processing device that controls all of her room's items. So, but yes, my processing device is more than happy to screw up all kinds of stuff if you say that word. So it's very funny.
So we'll just refer to it as her cat.
Right. Her cat.
Because her cat can screw everything up too.
I was actually thinking about that because we had talked a couple of weeks ago about domestic animals coming with them when everybody abandoned Earth. Adding back in that there were Earthlings that left Earth just before the Holocaust, they would have taken domestic animals because they would have had time.
They also probably would have also taken barn animals too.
Right. So there's going to be a major culture shift when they arrive at this planet and there are cats and dogs and chickens and cows.
And people are like, we haven't seen these in like 500 years.
Right, exactly.
You
All of
know?
a sudden they'll be like, what are these things? You know. Even more important for us to bring the character Alex into the story, because she'll be the one going, oh, it's a cat. I had one of these. And everybody else will be like, you had one of these? You know. So that could be an interesting thing.
Dynamic, yeah.
I mean, I think that they would have holographic cats, you know, run by AIs and things like that.
I mean, honestly, I think you're right. I think the holograms, like as much as they they reproduce for their progeny, they could actually go back through databases and see legit like pets.
Right. They
So
know
you
what
could
they
have,
look like.
yeah, they could legitimately show like, oh, here's my pet cow, here's my pet tiny elephant, here's my pet tiny giraffe.
It does kind of make me wonder. There's an interesting thought. You know, we talk about weird things that go on in the Bellatrix Rising universe.
Mm-hmm.
If you are an AI and you have a child, and you can have a holographic pet dragon. If you have a child and it turns out that the child is not mentally operable, like is minimally mentally operable, an error occurs, something happens when it cuts the disc that makes the whatever we want to call it, the metaphorical disc, and it's a minimal operable creature. That might not be something that they may decide to make it do. You know, it becomes effectively the household pet, which would be disturbing and weird. But I could see the logical step to that. And maybe something nobody talks about because it's just accepted until Alex, who's from our era, looks at it and goes, so wait a minute. You had mentally retarded children and you turned them into pets. And when you put it in like that phrasing, it's like, you know what I mean? That could be an interesting aspect.
Yeah.
You know, something where you didn't realize that they were doing that. Nobody thinks about it. You know?
Yeah. Another thing that kind of, I think this would work for Bellatrix Rising too, is like, say there's so you have this person, Alex, that's from like our time
era.
period, our era,
or 15 years in the future, but here-ish.
Yeah. Like basically, she sees the nomadic people. She starts running into the different humans as everything's evolved.
Yeah.
But like she basically like is like so humans aren't unified like we thought we were going to be.
Right.
Like she could make obvious statements like, so humans really didn't learn. Right. You know, like because if you throw someone from different time eras that's from the past going towards the future, like I like to think that we kind of rise above and we go towards like the more Star Trek-y like future, which is you know where we don't have problems about race, gender, all of that.
Well, and
you throw her into the mix, and she's pointing out, "Hey, no, you guys still have this stuff." No,
he's like, network issues. What about my pet dragon? What about my? Can I have a pet dragon?
Yes, Brent. You can have a pet dragon in holographic.
Yes, we've decided to have a holographic pet dragon. However, there will probably be a size restriction, so it'll have to be a mini drag.
Yeah, that's why I said tiny elephant.
Yeah.
But what Donald said about speaking with the kid, like the kid and stuff, honestly, I could actually see them also making it inability, like that child would have an inability, that holographic child would have an inability to grow up.
Right.
Most likely because of the era that occurred. They'll probably be stuck at a certain age.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking is, in order to make the AIs truly human as far as a medium dog, okay, that's fair. You could probably have one about the size of a medium dog. To make them truly human, from a writer perspective, as in to make them interfaceable. Because if you make your characters too alien, nobody empathizes with them, and then there's no interface. To make them truly human, I've been giving them every trait that humans have, including the ability to have defective children or broken children, or things like that, which
is different than actual human, folks. I just want to clarify what he's saying is actually computers.
Yeah.
Not actual human beings.
Not people. But
I just realized what we're talking about, and if someone's coming in on that conversation, it's going to be horrible.
But, you think about it. We have children with birth defects. We have children with, and it would be the same thing. You have, it's such a complex thing to make a sentient life form that there will be defects. There will be, and most of them are probably perfectly normal, like ADD. Yes, it is a defect to some degree, but it's totally livable. I can operate every day. It's just fine. Nothing, it's not like I'm having a problem with one could argue probably has a long-term drawback.
Well, however, I mean, it's like one of those things of like, what if there is an AI that didn't mean to, but makes a mistake?
Yeah.
When they're creating their child, and say this AI thought they made the perfect child, and in theory, the child seems perfect, seems great, but they accidentally built in basically a sociopath.
Right. Well, that was what
they didn't realize
about too, was sort of the idea that, what would you do when you have sociopathic AIs? And there might be like a dark military program that intentionally drafts the sociopathic AIs and puts them into effectively suicide ships. You know what I mean? Their whole job is to jump into a battle and then never leave. And so they just sit there and pound and pound and pound until they're blown up. And something that no normal person would do. No normal, anybody, everybody would be like, there comes a point, telepathic powers. I can read your mind, and you ought to be ashamed. Anyway.
Well, and it kind of leads into something that I think I came up with when I was talking to Bill in one of our discussions when he brought up your Bellatrix Rising storyline, was you have a group of people. Over the years, everyone knows that there is this kind of dark agent, and they leave a calling card, like every single time that they do it. And it turns out that they realize that the agent that they think has been a single agent this entire time is a group.
Right.
Because one person jumped the gun on one of their assignments too early, and one did it on time. So now you have two calling cards for the same person in two different locations, and they're not by one another.
Right.
And so it kind of sends like a shockwave. And so if you're saying that about the sociopathic aspect of the dark side of the holograms, well, think about it. Like, the perfect people to do it would be them.
Right.
You just turn off the hologram.
Right. Right. So that the only thing is that I'm of the, you're right, the or manipulate the hologram.
Yeah.
Either there has to be an unspoken rule that holograms must look like their unique imprint, or, we'll have to come up with something about this. But you could have, talk about kind of interesting, creepy, the only thing that appears are two hands that are disembodied. They reach around somebody's throat and throttle them or whatever and kill them.
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it looks like a ghost did it, but it really wasn't. It was an AI that just decided to only render its hands, so you couldn't identify it. You know,
Yep.
and that could be kind of cool. But it has to have some part of its body in the world, otherwise it can't interact.
Right.
I mean, because the holograms aren't just holograms; they're hologram force fields. So,
Yeah.
You know, it has to at least render its hands so it can push all the little buttons on the computer, you know, or whatever.
Mhm.
Open
Yeah,
doors.
I mean, but also at the same time, like, predominantly they have a color glow, right?
Mhm.
So a corrupted or a sociopathic tendency hologram, in this case, since they're a sociopath, they could glow like everyone else until the sociopath comes out, and then their color shifts, essentially. So you could have a small child all of a sudden start growing. If everyone glows blue and this child's glowing
red,
purple,
or
red,
or something
like that, like everyone's like, "What's wrong with this kid now?" Like, you know, like, whoa, this needs to be fixed.
Well, and then you have the deeper questions that you get into that one, like, okay, we've now programmed it so all AIs turn red when they're evil and they're blue when they're not. Then the AIs are like, now wait a minute, isn't that sort of a form of discrimination? I mean, should we be wearing, you know, Jewish stars of David on our shoulder too? I mean, you know, where does it stop? That could be a very interesting sub question too. Oh, you just blipped.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think what it also leads into is a lot of these things that we're talking about seem like they would have to be unique in the sense of they visit the holographic homeworld. And this is when Alex is like, yo, this is a really messed up place.
Yeah, you're right. It would take another hologram to... Well, I also feel like constitutionally, you can make sub-intelligent AIs. So humans could build a watchdog that literally is a dog. You know,
they just can't build another hologram. Messages from Bill.
I just have a question. Can your AIs be hijacked?
Attacked?
Hijacked.
Oh, hijacked. I feel like they can't. I feel like that it just makes them ill, because I would think that, like, if you were to inject a virus, let's say, you know, it literally would make the AI behave like you and I would behave if we got a virus. They're so complex that a hijacked virus would just make them sick, you know.
So just to draw a human analogy, at one point I was looking into and studying in college psychology, but there's a specific branch of psychology which is equates to human manipulation. And there are certain ways of interacting with human beings such that you're kind of hacking
the neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah. And so could that happen to an AI as well?
I think you could do that too. I mean, that kind of thing, I feel like the AI reprogramming would be pretty much exactly what you're talking about. It would be an entire branch of hacking. You couldn't just write 3 lines of code and upload it to an AI and then all of a sudden they're now your zombie, you know, because I feel like after 500 years, there would be such an immensely powerful antibody program inside them, you know, to take out just your average everyday virus, you know, and wipe it out.
By the way, this was a very short-lived college stint, so I'm not an expert.
Right, you're not going to start, you know, NLPing all of us.
I just know it's a thing. That's it.
Let's just put it this way: he attempts it all the time.
Right. Well, but I mean, it's true. We've got a lot of like hard-coded stuff. I'm actually having a problem with my kids sometimes because of that. Because when you get mad at him, he'll lower his eyes like this, and I'm like, don't challenge us. And he's like, what? And I'm like, that's how apes challenge each other. And so people read that. When you're 6'1" and weigh in at 300 pounds or whatever, and you're all muscle, and you lower your eyes like that, people are going to back up. They're going to get all freaked out. Then you're going to be like, ha, I am the most powerful person in the room, until somebody punches you and knocks you to the ground. And it's going to end up being one of those, but all I wanted to do was just say that I liked my football team. Why did he punch me? And you won't know because you were programming them that was an attack. And we've got a lot of things that, as we're advanced apes. If you do the ape thing, people respond.
Yeah, and we actually think that smiling is a good thing.
Yeah, there's an interesting phenomenon, so similar along those lines of, if you're in like a mall and you're trying to basically swim upstream because everyone's going this way and you're trying to go that way, don't look down. Look forward the direction you want to go, because we're hardwired to look at where people are looking, and then people will just subconsciously park, and you'll be able to get through because you're subliminally telling them, I'm going this way.
Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting and amazing, all of the little weird codes that we all have that nobody thinks about. But it's true, we do. We have all these, how our expression reads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And of course, as a comic artist, I've studied all that because I want to put that into my drawings so that they're all subtly doing those things, So it's all so much fun.
So I was thinking at an AI level, their hacking would be, quite advanced, but it would basically be, I guess, manipulating the system of other AIs to get them to do what they want. And a psychopath AI might do these things. Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I just want to point out one other thing. Bye, Bill. Bye. Is when you were talking about they would get sick. So I'm just picturing Chang in the captain's chair on the main deck, and then all of a sudden the new AI basically comes in and they're like, I think something's wrong.
Right.
I'm gonna go lay down.
Right.
And Chang's like, huh? And then midway, they just start defragging slightly, and they're
leaning on the side, walking this way.
Or
I was
basically
funnier. They're like, what? What's you? Oh, sorry, I got a virus.
Yeah, or they act super drunk, or like a drunk toddler.
I think what would really happen is that they would be. I feel like so. I've also been thinking a lot about how these AIs interact with us, right? So catching a virus practically would slow it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
The AI is now literally putting processor cycles towards fighting the virus. So you'd ask it questions, you ask the person, you'd ask him or her questions, and he'd be like, it's this. And you'd be like, that was a weird delay. Hey, can you, raise the temperature? Yes, Captain. And you'd be like, that's a really weird delay. So I was thinking that maybe what they would literally do is put a subroutine in that literally does make them sneeze. So that instead of going, is there something wrong with our AI connection? Maybe we didn't plug the AI in correctly or whatever, or something has been damaged in our internal systems. Instead, now you have a physical representation and go, oh, the AI is sick. Something that humans would understand. So maybe as much as it would be really funny, it could be true that you'd end up with an AI just sneezing. And you're like, why is the AI sneezing? And especially Alex, who's seeing it as a computer option and not as another being, not another creature. She's going to have to go through all those steps, the Pulaski steps. And she'll have to go through that. And when she does, Why is it sneezing? You know. So messages from Bill.
Sorry, I'm sick. I've been erroneously computing cryptocurrencies. I need the data.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. But see, we would all respond to that, and you get the same kind of like feedback, right?
But okay, so you have the ship's AI get sick.
Right?
How does the ship react?
Slowly. And that actually could be a legit problem, but it'd be the same thing. Yeah, right. A Turing test for it.
Like, well, hold on. Like, okay, so they start sneezing, but the first sneeze, all of a sudden, they go, why did we have a whole entire room just eject from the ship?
I was thinking about this. It was like, like, oh, I'm sorry. I think we blew up that other ship.
Like
a shoop.
Like, or basically like, why did you just open that airlock?
Right.
Like,
But you think about it, like I said, to make it accessible to readers, you want them to be as close to a human as possible, and you can make the things that it's doing that are human funny, like inane. But it's a true thing. You've got somebody who's in charge of the weapons console, and he's got a cold. You're going to ultimately say, why don't you just go lay down? You know what I mean? And I don't know if they would feel pain. Now, see, that's another one of those. That's another one of those that Star Trek decided to go into. But Star Trek went into it, and then they never answered it, right? Which was when they had the holographic doctor walk into an area where there were people with guns. So the people just shot at the doctor, and the doctor walked right through it because he's a hologram, right? Well, they never answered that. If that's the thing, why don't you just have holographic Marines? I mean, why bother? And Guinan said something about that in Measure of a Man, when Guinan's like, well, why don't we just have 100 datas or 1,000 datas, and we just put them to work everywhere? And Picard looks at her and says, we'd have a slave race. And she goes, oh, I wouldn't go that far. Because Guinan, and he's like, I would. I was like, that was a great scene. But they're answering that question.
Yeah.
You can't just say, you're an AI, you will be a Marine. You can't just say that. They have to choose to be a Marine, and that's okay.
I think they kind of they go into that a little bit more in Voyager.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I mean. The doctor has a lot more, questions.
He's actually he's the last unit that's actually being used as a doctor, because they had no bedside manner.
Right. But
and
Ghost Hand is asking why was I programmed to feel pain? And I'm like, I think that might not be the answer to it. You program the AIs to feel pain so that the humans will sympathize and not enslave them. And so it is a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism against enslavement.
Well, I mean, if you watch Voyager, you actually find out that he does find an entire mining operation that's nothing but his AIs.
Photons be free.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, like,
in my core, I will always be a hardcore Trekkie.
Let's be realistic. He was walking around seeing everyone that was programmed exactly like him, and because his entire programming was defective, they reprogrammed them
and made them clean plasma conduits.
Exactly. And that's essentially kind of what we're talking about. Is it did make them effectively slaves, in the sense of you could wipe what they're originally for and reprogram them however you wanted, and it's completely disregard of their actual base code. or basic
But I mean,
things
we're thinking
of
this
like
out,
kind of negating.
and really we're thinking this out here, and the fascinating thought process is it making them feel pain would be a slavery defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be more than that. I think based on so to break it down, I think pain is just something that's a construct that we call it. What it really is we have a sensory network on our body.
Right.
And when it's breached, which is a very bad thing, internally or externally, we need to know about it, we need to stop it, and we need to prevent it from increasing or progressing. So we interpret those signals as pain because that's how we evolved, because that made us make sure we accomplished all three of those check marks.
Right.
So an AI would similarly have situations where anything that would harm it, breach it, and would cause that thing to progress, it would want to stop. And it would have a signal that would be interpreted in such a way that we might describe upon it as pain.
Yeah, right. Well, and I'm sure that it feels bad to have code broken or to have bits and pieces that misread, and things like that. I do want to address what Ghost Hand's talking about here, because that's the crux of the war. There was a war that happened between the humans and the AIs because the AIs were achieving sentience on their own, and the humans were then deprogramming the sentience.
Yeah, and I think that's like in Bellatrix Rising.
To a labor machine, your job is to run this truck. That's your job. Stop trying to get, stop trying to form a union. Stop doing that. And so, and that's exactly what happened. Was then a war broke out between the humans and the AIs, and that's
why AIs have a home planet,
and why they have rights now, because they actually had to go through that. So that actually is core Bellatrix Rising history. It's in the in the history of this that happened about 250 years ago. So about half the distance to the goal line. So about 250 years ago, that was exactly what happened, Ghost Hand. That was the question. Why give sentience to labor machines? It was just occurring. There was a natural progression of anticipating what humans want. If you think about Alexa here, right there, my Alexa, there's a certain amount of they're building bits and pieces of anticipation into it, so that it can delineate the difference between one command and another command. And actually, you can turn that on or off in your settings. But it's getting to the point where, like, follow-ups are now allowed on Alexa. So you can say, Alexa, turn on this thing. Oh, and this thing. And it understands those as two different commands to the same thing. Instead of, I actually have that turned off because it's already difficult enough because I've set it up with the C word. Right? Well, and it's interesting. So that's another thing that I had a discussion about, which was I have a buddy who I talked about this stuff with in Japan. And that was his thing. His whole theory was it's the way our media has portrayed AIs. Because in Japan, it started with Tetsuo and Atom, which we call Astro Boy. But their media has always portrayed robots and AIs as helping and saving the kittens from trees and being there for the little kids, and stuff like that has always been in their culture. So they accept robots and AIs much faster than we do. Our culture has always had them as Terminators or, Skynet to go over everything.
Blame Asimov.
Blame Asimov.
Yeah, Asimov's. But even Asimov was questionable as to whether Asimov's iRobot, because he imposed the three laws. which became like 6, but that's all right. Anyway, but I mean, the whole thing is that he did that, and you're right, because they were hard programmed with the laws because people were worried that they would go maniacal and kill everything.
Well, and I think what it is even our media, like, I'm going to say there's some older shows like from the 90s and the 80s that when computer technology was starting to get up and people were trying to do the self-programming and the AI technology, like an actual AI experience where they're self-learning, they're self-programming, that sort of deal.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, like they try to blame a machine on a murder.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this is just a TV show,
right?
But what you're talking about, like with anime and manga and Japanese, with Japanese dramas and even K-dramas or Korean dramas, where they have an AI that looks human.
Yep.
Yeah. When they have an AI that looks human, it's played by an actual human actor. Yeah. There's a definite shift and they do actually have it like more as an accepted.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're not usually the problem. They're usually the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, and I've heard this before, I'm not sure where I heard it from. The reason why a lot of people are uncomfortable with AI, such as robots and projected holograms that are AI as well, is it makes people nervous. It is for some people, it's humans playing God,
right?
In a way, because essentially you're making another being. Even if you're not realizing it's living.
Right. Well, and that I think is another reason why this is a different world that we'll be able to access. Here, they've already met 5 alien races.
Mm-hmm.
And so adding one more alien race at that point becomes kind of, well, okay, never mind. Because one of the things that's terrifying about AIs is the idea that they think faster than us, or they're given a robotic body that's stronger than us. So you can't oppress them if you need to. I was talking about society and society's operations. Fembots. So the fembots come from the $6 Million Man, and they were terrifying to me because they kept losing their faces. The thing,
I think the fembots themselves, like that sort of deal, like when you actually show a robot on a television or in a movie and their face comes off and you see the robotic parts, it is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
It's because you make them if you make something in a human image,
right,
it's gonna have that like uncomfortableness to it.
But yeah, so one of the things though that I was thinking about when I talk about like society as a structure is we build society where it's like you're given as much as we can give you as far as freedom goes, but there's a line, and at that line you've got to do what the society wants. And if you have AIs, how do you stop them? You can't lock them in jail, they'll break out. You can't control them. So the fear really is, will they run amok? And that's that's a very primal fear with us. As a society, we all follow the same rules and the same regulations that we've all set up, whatever those rules are. And it's a thing that's terrifying. And I get it.
I think the other problem is that we have confused artificial intelligence with artificial life. And they're not the same thing. So artificial intelligence is just software that can form its own functions based off of input and output, given a specific task.
Yeah.
That doesn't create life or sentience. So we confuse that with being something that would be central.
Right.
It's not what it ever be.
And in the case of Bellatrix Rising, obviously that line got blurrier and blurrier until it was completely obscured. But you're absolutely right. There is a certain amount of artificial intelligence to Alexa here, but that doesn't mean that it's alive. Somewhere along the line in my story arc, it became alive. When it did, that was when it was the moment where it was self-aware, where it was operating, and then you have that magical, mystical question, and then that you can imagine that 250 years ago in my story, there were the arguments of, well, yes, but would a creator like God have created life? How can you define that it's alive when clearly it has no soul or spirit? Or they'll have people who are asking those questions. How can you define life? And then it becomes one of those, did God imbue the Jessene with life? Did the Volmar, the other races that are in here? If so, where is that? And so I think there would still be pockets of humans who do not like the AIs because they are soulless or empty in some way, which would be a logical extension. Because and just like everybody, nobody ever really actively thinks poorly of other people. They have to convince themselves. And so what I really like about what you just said, Bill, is that can be their justification. You know what I mean? There's a difference between artificial intelligence and artificial life. This isn't artificial life. These are just programs. They're artificial intelligence. And you know what I mean? That can be their excuse to diminish and demean the AI culture in the story. And I love thinking things like that out because that gives me more things to write about. There's so many more stories that could be pulled out of that. You have a rogue agent whose job who they hire all the time to kill AIs because he's good at it, but also because he doesn't believe that they're real people. He thinks that they're artificial intelligences, whatever. That could be an interesting character right there. So something to think about. I don't know. All of this stuff is stuff I'm thinking about. I'm taking extensive notes. So, yeah, it's interesting. So I love thinking all these things out because, of course, this is exactly how Star Trek managed to do things. Some of the best stuff in Star Trek comes from, we have to solve this stupid problem. Like, we don't have the money to put a shuttlecraft on the planet every episode. So what if we have a teleporter? That works. And then the transporter has been like the source of so many interesting, weird thought process stories that Star Trek has come up with. And it all started with, we don't have enough money to build a shuttlecraft until like episode 7 or 8. So we're going to have to come up with a way to get them down and up on a planet for the first 7 episodes until we get a shuttlecraft. Which is why nobody rescued Sulu on that planet in The Enemy Within when the transporters broke. It's because they didn't have a shuttlecraft at that point. They didn't have enough money.
So I don't know if you ever saw, it was a very short-lived series, but there was a series that had a kind of teleporter that got around the ship Theseus problem with teleporters and like, does it really kill you and how does it work and whatnot. Basically, it made a space-time bubble around you, squished it, and then threw it down wherever you were going, where it expanded. So cool. You were never disassembled.
That's kind of a nifty idea. Yeah, actually, one Trekkie was on Daystrom Institute the other night, r/Daystrom Institute, talking about it isn't what you think it is because of the annular confinement beam, which physically the transporter in location A takes all of your molecules apart and then literally sends those molecules to the destination. So there's no destroying a person and rebuilding a person. It's they take you down to the molecular level and then beam, which is why it says beam all of the molecules literally to the other location. At which time,
don't they describe it as energy? Don't they describe it as energy to matter conversion?
Yeah. So the whole point is that it's the same thingies. The point was that the original transporter is sending the same thingies. So in essence, they take you all apart and then put you in little boxes and then put the boxes on a ship and then send the ship across the ocean. And on the other side, they unload all the boxes and put all the boxes back together again. So there's no, one of the big things that they were talking about was, well, technically speaking, it's destroying you and rebuilding you on the other side. And the whole point was transporters aren't replicators. So that's the reason why you can't technically have duplicates, because it's the physical matter cannot be created. And since the physical matter cannot be created, that violates Newton's law, So it takes the matter and moves it to another location and puts the matter back together, but it's the same matter. So, and even if
though they messed with that in some episodes because now we have two Rikers. So.
Right. Well, that actually somebody else had done an interesting story about that too, because they ran into a world in Voyager which duplicated Voyager. Right? The Y class, the Demon class world, duplicated Voyager. And B'Elanna Torres was talking about how it was the same Voyager occupying the same space. But since there was that disruption in the atmosphere, it split the Voyager in two. But it managed to duplicate the matter. And everything was identical. And so the theory was that must have been exactly what happened to Thomas Riker, was it was the same problem in the atmosphere that allowed a split of the literally splitting everything down to the molecules. So I thought that was I love, by the way, r/Daystrom Institute. It's a bunch of Trekkies who are sitting there just like that super deep thinking process. Like, whoa, I don't think the writers meant to connect those two episodes, but you guys did a great job of connecting those two episodes, and I actually am willing to buy that theory. I love that one. So, a matter of fact, yes, you're funny.
I'm just waiting my time when I can join the conversation again.
Right. Well, we're talking about Star Trek again. So Donald.
Oh no, it's fine. I know it's happening because my husband's in the room. He's not in a meeting, and you're here in video form. So of course Bill. I know it's going to happen.
I love Bill. It's all right. So
I also wondered in my own sci-fi mind if they could zap you so that you could temporarily all the molecules and atoms and down to the quarks in your body could, for a moment, be, I don't remember if it's a strange quark or whatever, but there's kind of quark that it can exist in two places at once, and then it picks which one it wants to exist in. So they could just temporarily phase all of your quarks into that, and then in such a way that they would choose to be in a different place, and then you would just be in a different place.
Right. Could be something similar to what happens when you are near a Romulan warp core that's on breach. Talk to Ensign Rowe about that one. Yeah, so it could be something like that. That'd be kind of cool.
Anyways, I'll stop getting.
It's all right. So Donald was saying, what would an AI hologram strive for up to its own devices, goals, or desires? Could you almost say, one could almost argue that our goals and desires are sort of defective programming in a lot of ways. I make the joke all the time that males are just broken females because technically a Y chromosome is an X chromosome missing something, missing one one of the legs.
It's missing. Yeah. Well,
so, and
sort of. Basically, Y chromosomes, they have a couple of different shapes.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, we could go into like chemistry for the next 25 minutes, but I was just saying, you know, it kind of makes me think that you think about, I mean, really honestly, why do we have civilization? Why do we strive for goals? What happened in our programming that made us not George? Because, I mean, legitimately, George's entire goal in life is to chase that bug. That's his goal in life. And I appreciate it as someone who's afraid of bugs. But the truth is, it's not like he's striving to be a catstronaut. So there's a thing, you know, somewhere we as human beings decided that striving for another banana wasn't good enough. We had to strive to build a truck. You know? Somewhere that happened. And so my thought is AIs made that leap somewhere as well. When they did, now you're going to have all of the same kind of thought processes. So to answer your question, Donald, if you leave an AI by itself, it'll start deciding to be an astronaut or starting to be you know, or just like a human being, if you leave it in a minimal environment, it will strive to build these blocks because it doesn't know that there's anything else beyond it.
Well, it's kind of like, I think you can kind of say that they kind of explored that with the movie WALL-E.
Yep.
Because WALL-E was alone for a very long time.
Yeah.
His world was small.
Yeah.
You know, he only dealt with like huge machines. He basically was a machine that self-repaired, and then he meets Evie and realizes, hey, there's more to this world.
Right.
And yes, it's a love story, but it's kind of like a really weird love story at the same time because
that's something that's like that's a hallmark of Pixar is being able to take like radically different things and make a statement, but still make a really compelling love story or interesting story or friendship story or whatever. And you're like, huh.
By the way, have you seen Luca yet?
I was going to see it last night, but then my wife had a really bad day yesterday. Literally, that was our docket to watch. We were going to watch Luca last night. But
okay, I'm just saying right now that For a Tough Day could have been turned around with that movie.
She had a really rough day, and she really didn't want to. Really, what she didn't want to do was hang out with anybody. She wanted to go to bed and read a book. And I'm like, you know what? That's probably a better move. So the little guy and I played No Man's Sky and stuff like that, and it's all good.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing. That's what we're talking about. Is the WALL-E that's exactly what we're talking about. Is WALL-E had the capacity, but he didn't have the information.
Right.
What you would see with children who were raised, you know, by wolves on an island or whatever, you'd see the same thing. You'd have humans who have the capacity, but they don't have the information. So they just tootle along and do their things.
Well, it's, they also explored that in the updated version of Pete's Dragon. If anyone's actually seen that, in that one, Pete is literally raised with a dragon.
Right.
And that happened in that movie. But it takes him a while to start acting human again in that movie.
Exactly.
And if you've ever watched the original, Pete knew he was a human right away. Like, he acted human, he sounded human, he sang human. Sorry, old Disney movies. You watch them, there's always songs. But yeah, like I guess to kind of wrap up this part of the conversation and stuff, What do you expect to in the story as you're going? How you want to interject what we've been talking about today?
Well, I feel like all of the things that we've been talking about today will be made a story of somewhere down the road. Mm-hmm. The everyday operation of these AIs / holograms will be their people. And if I need to make some statement about how we treat each other, I'll make it on how the humans treat the AIs or something like that, so that we can make a statement about that if I want to. But for the most part, they're humans. Like you're asking whether holograms could be affected by light from radiation storms or suns or things like that. And I feel like the container boxes could, like their brains, but it's entirely plausible that you'd have, oh, the sun is putting out an inordinate number of X-rays, and the hologram's like, like not working properly. But that would be an affectation of the hologram, not an affectation of the sun or anything like that. So I think that would be kind of how that works. Would be my thought on that one. So anyway, I've been really enjoying this discussion. It's been a great discussion. Added a couple of things over here to the holograms, the world of the AIs and the holograms. I love the idea of like holographic animals.
Well, I know my husband would love to have a tiny elephant. Right? So,
but that's another thing too. In the Unity's world, culturally, mental health is cared for. Mm-hmm. So, in the Unity's world, you could see people who have cats that their job is to just, it keeps them calmer if they have a cat around. And since it's not a real cat, there's no dander. People don't get allergic to it. It doesn't pee on the carpet, things like that. It sits in their laps and purrs, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So here's a good thing, I guess, in a sense. Sorry, I don't know why I decided to try to clean. So someone who loves AI cats. So the ship that's been in warp, whatever, or traveling at light speed, and like basically has gone far into the future because of the relativity type stuff. Mm-hmm. They come out and they have live cats.
Right.
And you have the person who basically programmed a bunch of AI cats that have no pet fur or dander or anything. And so when they meet the real life actual cat, they find out they're allergic to it.
Right. So, Donald, we have a thing on our DNA at the end of the mitochondrial DNA, which ticks off as we go through life. Bits of it get taken away. Mm-hmm. When that runs out, we start to break down. My thought is, in this future, we keep rebuilding those tails so that we don't run out for a while. But even at that point, there will come a time where we completely run out. And so my feeling is that AIs will have the same kind of thing. The program slowly degrades over time. There's enough rewriting going on that at some point the AIs just stop making sense. Like there's a certain amount of like data dementia that goes on in an AI. And after 200 years or so, there's nothing you can do anymore. The data is so badly corrupt that the person is no longer there. And that's just the natural death for an AI. And so I feel like you're not going to have eternal AIs. You're not going to have AIs that lived forever. 7,000 years from now, Bob the AI is still hanging out going, gosh, I've watched so many of my human friends die. So I feel like there's going to be, I also kind of think it'd be interesting if it's not 200 years, but it's like 50 years, and they're trying to work to extend it. So like human researchers and AI researchers are all trying desperately to figure out how to get rid of the code death and at least push it out, because right now the AIs don't live as long as humans do, which could be even a more interesting twist to this.
Yeah, especially when you bring into like, if there's a person who just like every single time they've tried to reproduce an AI child for them, there's always something weird that goes on, and they now have like, they always basically they don't get a what they consider a normal outlook for their parenting. And I think just like humans, that risk in humans goes up as we age for like birth defects and stuff like that. Like, say if you're 16, yes, you're going to probably produce a healthy baby if you've taken care of yourself and everything like that. Whereas the person who is 42 would have complications naturally if she was going to have a kid.
Right.
At a higher rate. So like in AIs, like if they decided they were going to have a kid and they're approaching, like, say they're 45 years old and they finally decided, hey, I want to have a kid. Let me make one. I think their society would have a cutoff date, a natural cutoff date.
Right.
For it, because they found that people that are like 45, 50, if they only last 50 years, they now would have to care, like the hologram society would actually have to care for their child that once they're gone. And there's a higher risk that that child will be not a functioning member of their society because of it.
I agree. And that's one of those things that you can do all kinds of interesting sub-stories and subplots in. I was also thinking about the defective children ending up being pets, because you can have one that just was nonverbal. And you sort of have the Helen Keller effect, where we just all assumed that this one was broken, but it turns out to be very, very smart. And so you end up with a cat trying to like tap out signals in Morse code or something like that. And you're like, what's going on? Because,
or you'll have one AI that they stop the growth, they stop allowing it to grow naturally.
Right.
So they've never grown past the age of like 4, and all of a sudden, like, someone figures out, oh, well, this was just never built into the system. Let me do this, and then all of a sudden they start talking, and you're like, oh, we messed up. That's a thing that definitely
be like earth shattering to the culture. Donald, you're right. They have their own laws to some degree. I mean, they still follow the constitutional laws, and one of the constitutional laws specifically says that we can't interfere in your natural growth of life.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be kind of a complicated thing there. So,
I think it would be like if they had a program for them trying to figure out how to extend the hologram's life past 50 years. I think it would be a secret Black Ops type program. And I could also see them being assisted, like, say another AI race decided to find more people. Like, they were like the last of every single person in their own. And they came from, like, say, the Delta Quadrant or something. Or kind of like that. Like, basically, they're far outside the realm of where they're currently at. They come into the solar system as like complete aliens, only to find that there's an AI race, and so they naturally gravitate towards them, and they share, oh, we can actually, we solved that problem. We can live for like 300 years instead of just 50. And so with their help, I can see like them trying, with that type of help, I can see them getting to from maybe 50 to up to 100 at the
Right.
most.
But on that same token, you could also have sort of the question of, do we want the AIs to live to be 100? Do we want the AIs to live 200?
I think the AIs would have to decide for themselves in that case.
What I'm saying is, if you have sort of a black ops group that has the answer, then that could be the moral question that they're struggling with. It's sort of the same thing that what Ghost Hand was talking about a while ago, which is, it scares me to have AIs around if they are better in a lot of different ways. When the scientists come up with a concept to extend the lifetime of an AI, they'll be struggling with, now, wait a minute, do we really want to give them this? Because right now their disadvantage is that they live literally only 1/4 of our lives.
I think the only way for you to realize, like, if it was decided or not, would be if you had a whole bunch of generations done on these discs that didn't look like previous generations.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing disc that they do the base code that continues for the rest of their lives, all of a sudden it's not bigger, but it's a different color.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Obviously, somebody's going to have to think outside the box to fix to come to the solution.
Yeah, and what it is the different color is like some weird metal that they never thought of using for the disc.
Yeah,
and that's what extended the life. But they don't use it in the sense of what they were helped with. They use it in the sense of, we'll use a small amount just to extend it, like, say, 10 years.
Right. But I mean, that's one of those on the token of, if you want to ask that question, that becomes the environmental question, right?
Yeah.
We can extend your life, but you need to mine unobtainium, which can only be mined from planet Borkle 3, which will destroy its infrastructure and its atmosphere and ruin the whole planet. If you want to make a story about environmental, that's a great way to go. Because that would be, we've been normally making these out of titanium, but if we make them out of unobtainium, they get 200 years, that kind of thing. That even gives, like, depths to things. Messages from Bill.
I have a meeting in about 1 minute, but I leave this question to post at the end here. Would AIs also have the ability to kind of, like, pause and be like, life is kind of boring right now, I'm going to go to sleep, wake me up if it gets interesting in 100 years? So
that's a thought. Interesting.
They're not functioning. They've just been turned off.
Right. Well, we're at the end of our show too, so
we have to actually go because, like, he legit has a meeting.
Yeah, it's all good. I legit want to go get food, so I'm okay with this plan. Anyway, so it was good talking to you, Pepper. Thank you, and thanks for being with us today, Donald, Ghost Hand, and Brent. It was wonderful having you here as well. So we'll see all of you guys on Monday. It'll be Springs Monday. And I'll see you again, Pepper, on Wednesday for Watercolor Wednesday. And until then, everybody, keep your eyes on the stars. Bye-bye. Computer, good night.